Roses are probably the most popular flowering landscape shrub that we have throughout the country to choose from. They're very popular. They have a long blooming period, large colorful flowers, and there are thousands of cultivars to choose from. Problem though is that some of them are very susceptible to diseases. The most popular disease that we deal with is the black spot of rose, and there's some other issues. But recently there's been a very devastating disease that's been spreading around called rose rosette. And because of that, some people are starting to look for alternatives to replace their roses with. And so we're going to take a look at several shrubs that provide wonderful flower color as well as other great attributes that you could use in your landscape besides roses. First one we're going to look at are the hydrangeas. Now the genus Hydrangea is a large genus. There's many different species, and within each of those species there's multitude of cultivars. Their flower color ranges from pinks to blues and reds and whites. There's early spring blooming, and then there's some that bloom a little bit later, and there's even some that are supposed to be rebloomers, bloom sporadically throughout the summer. This one right here is in full bloom right now. This is one of the oak leaf hydrangeas, one of the best ones I think we have for Oklahoma. They also prefer a little bit of shade, so they do great in shady conditions. And as you can see, this has a huge panicle of flowers, mostly white, though there are some pink ones in here, and there's another cultivar over there that has a little bit more pink in them. The neat thing about these when they're done flowering is they continue to provide some interest. The portions of the flower that dry up, the seed pods and whatnot, will turn a little bit of a pinkish color. The foliage stays nice through the summer, and then it can have a spectacular reddish fall color as well. Bark is kind of interesting, so after the leaves fall in the autumn, throughout the winter months, you still have something to look at. So an excellent shrub for our landscape. Another shrub that I really like and I think is underutilized is the genus Hypericum, which is the St. John's worts. This is an awesome shrub. It can actually be semi-evergreen to evergreen depending on the species and the cultivar. But look at the beautiful bright buttercup yellow flowers that are just covered, that are covering these plants. It's a beautiful plant. As you can see, it's also the bees and the hummingbirds and the butterflies love this plant. The bees are going crazy right now. It'll bloom early summer and through through the early part of the summer, and then sometimes we'll get some blooms a little bit later on. The foliage is a blue-green to sometimes a dark green. They can get anywhere from 2 to 3 feet high and just about as wide to 5 or 6 feet high, just depending on the cultivar. Another nice attribute is that it can have a nice fall color, and on some species, if you look at the fruits that follow the flowers, they can be a reddish to reddish brown color as well, so they can look pretty spectacular a little bit later on in the summer and the fall. These plants like fairly, relatively moist soils, but they are relatively drought tolerant as well, and they're just great plants for full sun. Another overlooked shrub that's actually a native is Cephalanthus or Buttonbush. This is a plant that's found growing throughout Oklahoma along waterways, along the edges of streams and lakes and ponds, etc. So it likes wet feet, and so if you have a wet spot in your garden, this might be something to consider. But it can grow. The species can get about 8 to 10 feet tall. I've seen it even a little bit taller than that. This particular one here, you can see it's been kind of trained into a single stem, but otherwise it would be a multi-stem shrub with arching branches. And then, of course, during the summertime, you can see it's in full bloom right now, and these blooms are really unique and really cool. We call it Buttonbush. I call it, it looks to me like it looks more like a pin cushion with lots of little pins stuck in the flower. But this is really cool. There's a cultivar called Sugar Shack. It's only supposed to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and just about as wide. Otherwise, they get a little bit taller. Abelia is a favorite of the South. It is a beautiful shrub, has bright glossy green leaves, and as you can see, it has white to pink flowers. Blooms in the spring to early summer, and actually can bloom sporadically throughout the rest of the summer, rest of the growing season until fall. It is another plant that's semi-evergreen to evergreen, depending on our winters and the species, in the cultivar or the species. But this is a great plant. It's fragrant, it attracts butterflies, hummingbirds, and bees. The older cultivars or varieties can get quite large. As you can see here, they can get 6, 7, 8 feet tall probably, and just about as wide. The newer cultivars that are on the market are more compact, smaller, getting maybe 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, and many of them have some wonderful variegated foliage as well. The Rose of Sharon, boy, you can't beat that one too, and you don't want to forget this one. It's as you can see in this particular cultivar, the flowers are large. This is a nice double flowering form. It has even a little bit of a red center on in the inside of the throat, and that's common on many of the plants. They have an overall color of the petals, and then often a center that's a different color, usually red or white, depending on the cultivar. But this plant has improved over the years. The older varieties, they reseed themselves like crazy, and in some places have been considered invasive weeds. But a lot of the newer cultivars are hybrids and produce a lot less seed, and so they're not as much of a problem. They're also designed to be a little bit more compact and a lot more flowers on the plants. But they can get quite large. They can get, we've got some on campus that are probably 10, 15 feet tall, been trained into small trees. So they can be a nice shrub or medium to large shrub to even a small tree. But they're excellent plants and put on a great show in early to mid-summer. So I hope this gives you some great ideas if you're looking for some new shrubs for the landscape. Roses are still great, don't rule them out, but there's plenty of other plants out there that provide wonderful summer flowers as well as other characteristics.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.